Welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY. In today's DIY video, from expensive to affordable, Dollar Tree DIY high-end dupe basket hacks, Pottery Barn dupe. Hello again, my DIY loving friends. Who says you can't have style on a budget? Get ready for some serious crafting magic as we transform basic Dollar Tree materials into chic and trendy home decor pieces. We're talking Pottery Barn dupe level here, folks, but without the price tag. Get ready to save some serious cash with our high-end dupe hacks that'll make your friends think you spent a fortune on designer home decor. All you need is a few materials from the Dollar Tree and some from your recycling bin and a sprinkle of creativity. I'll show you how to turn those basic supplies into high-end beauties that will have everyone asking, where did you get that? Now let's go DIY together. So stick around, let's go make some stuff and jump right into this. For this first DIY, I'm using this small square box. It's a gift box from Dollar Tree, as well as some jute ribbon that I had in my stash, but I will drop a link in the description box below for something similar to it. And I'm going to start with cutting 5 pieces of this jute ribbon that are long enough to wrap around all 4 sides of the gift box sideways, plus a little extra. And I'm going to be using hot glue to attach all 5 pieces of the ribbon that are going to be spread out equal distance apart, or just about equal distance. It really doesn't have to be exact. And I'm just gluing the very ends of the ribbon to the corner of the box, as you can see me do right here. And next I'm using some white macrame cording from this giant roll of macrame cord that I got on Amazon like 2 years ago. Seriously, it's lasted me forever. And I will also link that for you below. We're going to be weaving with this macrame cord, but first I'm going to glue down 4 rows of the cord right over the pieces of ribbon, like over all of them. And that's before the actual weaving begins. I'm also not cutting this cord. I'm just folding it over and going back into the other direction, like you can see me do here. I will be doing this continuously through the whole project without actually cutting that macrame cord. We're just going to be folding it over and going back the opposite direction till the very end. At this point, we'll begin weaving, which is taking the macrame cord over and under the pieces of the jute ribbon, and we're alternating the ribbon for each woven row. We will do 2 rows of that macrame cord for each weave. So I weave 1 row, I fold it over, and I take the cord back over the opposite direction. That will count as 1 woven row. In other words, each woven row will have 2 pieces of macrame cord. Hopefully that makes sense to you. It's not complicated. It's a basic weave, but we're using 2 rows of cord each time we weave. That's really all I'm trying to say. The second woven row, we are going to alternate the jute ribbon. So we are going under the pieces of jute that we went over on the first row and over the pieces of the jute ribbon that we went under on the first row. Again, just a basic weave. The only difference is that we are using 2 rows of the white cording each time. So if you get confused, slow down or even pause the video as you go and you will see exactly what I mean. The third row alternates over and under again, changing the jute ribbon each time and still doing 2 passes of that macrame cord each time. And basically we're going to continue this alternating over and under, weaving 2 rows of macrame cord all the way around until all 4 sides of the box are covered with the weave. We can weave right over the corners without stopping. We're just going to keep going. And we're going to try your best to push all of that cording in tightly every time you do a weave so that you can't see the blue color design of that gift box coming through. And in retrospect, I probably should have painted the box a really nice light neutral color before doing this. So if you repeat this project, I recommend you paint the box first. So do as I say, not as I do. I know I'm always saying that, but painting the box first will probably help make the weaving a little easier in that you won't have to worry about the box design coming through at all. And as you can see at this point, we've woven the box almost to the very end, all the way around all four sides. And to end this weave, I'm just gonna keep going and weaving right up until there is no box left. And at that point, I stop and I use some hot glue to secure the ends of the jute ribbon to keep them from unraveling before snipping off the excess ribbon. And then using a small scissors to trim any of that macrame cord fringe around the edges that I could see, and basically cleaning up the weave as best as I could. Now, I know some people would sew some adorable little cloth inserts for the inside of this box, and kudos to those people, but I am sorry, you guys. I'm just lazy. No other excuse for it. I cut some felt to fit in the bottom of the box, some white felt that I had from Dollar Tree, and then using some tan colored felt from my stash, I hot glued that to the sides of the box, covering them as best that I could and trimming the top of the felt that was sticking out of the top of the box. I know I could have done a better job covering the inside, but I was tired. It was late, so I did what I did, and I just got it covered. Lastly, I cut 4 pieces of that jute ribbon we were weaving with to fit over the 4 top edges of the box just to finish them off and dyed that messy felt insert that I had created and just basically make it a little bit more polished looking. And this is my woven Dollar Tree gift box basket, and it's really a very attractive looking weave. It has some texture to it, and I really like the two-tone look, the 2 different types of rope used. I think the basket definitely looks like more than it is, which is a $1.25 gift box. It's an easy project and a nice payoff. This next DIY uses an empty oatmeal canister from my recycling bin, and I took it outside to spray paint it with Rust-Oleum paint and primer in ivory silk, which I will link for you below. While that dries, I take a roll of craft paper from the Dollar Tree and I cut up the roll while it was rolled up into smaller rolls that are about 1.5 inches wide. This is not an exact measurement. You can go thicker or thinner with your cuts. It will work no matter what. And I did end up having to get a second roll of craft paper though, because one whole roll was not really enough. I unroll each strip of paper and proceed to crumble it up and twist it to make it basically a wrinkly, bunched up mess. I'm going to do this with all the rolled up strips that I cut. And then I take 3 strips and glue the tops together. You can also staple them together too, and I do a simple braid all the way down to the end where I'm going to twist that end at the end of the braid, and that will have it hold its shape. The braid pretty much stays together on its own at the bottom. You really don't have to do much to it. You're going to be making as many braids as you can out of the strips that you made. You're just going to do a lot of braiding. So I've got a whole bunch of craft paper braids and my oatmeal canister is dry, and I'm going to start wrapping the canister with the braids. I'm hot gluing them down to secure them. We're going to start from the bottom of the canister and we're going to work our way up to the top. And I'm just doing my best to make sure that none of the canister is peeking through and that it is really fully covered with these craft paper braids. When I do get the top, I do a couple of rows of the braids going over the top edge and even down into the inside. And I'm just wrapping the inside about 1 inch or so down so that it kind of looks as though the entire thing is made out of craft paper braids. I needed to make some handles for my basket and I wanted them to be pretty thick. So I figured the best way to do this was to use this super thick nautical rope, and I will link that for you below. I cut 2 pieces of that were the height of the canister, looped over the top a bit to form a handle, and I made 2 of those the same size. And then I'm using some craft paper braids that I have left to begin wrapping the rope with the braids so that you won't see the rope anymore. You're just going to see the craft paper braids. I'm using hot glue to secure the braids as I go, and I wrap the entire length of the rope, and then I'm going to repeat that with the second rope. I needed to attach these two handles to the sides of the basket going up the entire length of the basket. And you know I like to be real with you, and I have to say this part was not the easiest to do. First of all, getting those handles to stick to the basket was a super challenge. They kept detaching as I went along, and not only did I try hot glue, but I also tried super glue and some tacky white glue as well. Those rope handles didn't want to be glued down. I really finally just laid on a ton of glue and clamped the handles in place and left them overnight, which was not perfect. And honestly, the handles ended up a little wonkier than I was hoping for, but they did finally stay in place. Then when they dried, I trimmed the bottoms of the handles so that the basket would stand up straight. And this is my braided craft paper dupe basket. Believe it or not, this is a dupe for these Pottery Barn baskets that retail for $150 to $200 a piece. Now I know mine is not perfect, but I think with a couple of tweaks or maybe trying some other shapes, this could be phenomenal looking and such a high-end dupe. As it is, I love the look of it, and never in a million years is anyone going to guess that that was a roll of craft paper. That to me is a total win. For this next DIY, I'm using this small plastic planter from Dollar Tree that I had already painted for a previous project. I also have this empty ribbon roll that's from Dollar Tree as well, and I'm going to use this hard inner roll from it as a pedestal for the planter to rest on. So the first thing I do is hot glue the roll to the bottom of my planter. Next, I'm going to start wrapping the pedestal with this jute twine, and you can get jute at Dollar Tree, but I do like to buy the larger rolls of it on Amazon. It's just more economical that way, and I'll link this one that I got for you below. I start from the very bottom and I use hot glue to secure the jute as I wrap it, and I'm basically going to wrap the entire pedestal and the planter up to the very top with the jute. It's just a basic jute wrap, easy peasy. Once I get to the top, I'm going to keep wrapping with the jute on the inside of the planter, just down into it about an inch or so before I stop. I have 3-inch wood circles, and I'm using them to trace some half circles from the top of the planter downward, and I use chalk to trace so that I can wipe the marks away later. I want each of my half circles to overlap each other by about an inch, and I want the half circles to go around the diameter of the whole planter. And I did measurements. They weren't exact, so I did my best to squeeze 6 half circles relatively evenly around the top of the planter. I cut a ton of pieces of jute to outline and fill in my half circles. The first one I cut were 7 inches long and a little too short, so I did cut a bunch more that were 9 inches long, which was more than enough to fit the outline of the half circles. So starting on that traced half circle line, I hot glue a piece of jute onto that half circle shape in chalk. Then I glue another piece of jute onto the next half circle next to that one, and that circle will overlap the first circle by, again, about an inch, give or take. It's not exact. I'm going to continue until I have a piece of jute outlining all 6 of my half circles that are going around the planter. Then I start filling in each half circle with more pieces of jute, just following the line of the outline pieces. And I'm going to continue to fill in the half circles with the jute until I reach the top and that circle just starts to close up. When I get to the middle of the circle, at some point I stopped worrying about what the middle looked like because I decided to put something over it in the final project. So that is why some of those circle middles on this look different than other ones. And each of my half circles that I fill as I fill them, they're going to overlap the one that I filled before it. So I just follow those lines that I made initially with the jute. With all my half circles filled in with jute, I trim all the excess pieces on the inside down a little bit, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to try and press them down just so that they stick to the inside lip of the planter. It's not a perfect science, but it's a little bit better, and they won't really be as visible, hopefully. I cut a piece of burlap I got at Walmart, but Dollar Tree has some burlap too, and in the spirit of super lazy basket inserts, I hot glued the piece of burlap all the way around the inside of that planter over all that excess jute that we just glued down around the inside lip. And I know, I could have done that in a much nicer way. But again, it was late and I was tired. I know you understand me, right? I know you do. Because I wasn't happy with the middles of all those half circles we made, I decided to cover them, and I drew a small circle on some parchment paper, grabbed some of that white macrame cord, which I will link for you below, and I began wrapping the cord into a small pinwheel shape. Is that a pinwheel? It's not a pinwheel. Well, a circle anyway. Wrap them into circles, securing it in place with hot glue, and I repeated that 6 times for all 6 half circles, making each of the macrame cord circles the same size as the one I drew on that parchment paper. Then I used some hot glue to attach the white circles to the middle of all 6 of my half circles. I also totally burned out my Churabonder glue gun doing this, and now I'm using like a Churabonder glue gun from like the 1970s, which I had to use for all the rest of the projects. It wasn't good. I covered up the top of the planter with nautical rope to hide the seam between the burlap and the top of the planter. You know when you watch a crafting video and you just wish that the crafter would just stop what they're doing and just not add anything else? The like less is more type of thing. Well, prepare to yell that at your screen. I just kept going. Grabbed 12 wood half circles. I threw them in a little tub of folk art antique wax, mixed with the water to stain them, remove them and wipe the excess with dry paper towel. I decided to then attach a half bead to the centers of each of my macrame cord circles. And then, why stop there? I then glued the remaining 6 half beads to the pedestal base just for some extra flair. And then I finally showed some restraint and I just stopped. And this is my pedestal jute planter. Here's the thing. I don't hate it, but understand I had a vision for this and this isn't it. Maybe I'll try again someday, but this falls short for me. And those macrame cord circles and half beads are now just giving me owl eye vibes. And it's like, I can't unsee it. And now you can't unsee it either. You're welcome. This next DIY, I had this very thick jute I got on Amazon. I'll link it below. And this medium-sized pot, a clay pot from Dollar Tree. I start by wrapping the bottom of the pot with the very thick jute, starting from the inside. And I did not cover that hole in the middle. And that's not for any particular reason. I just didn't. You could leave it there to use with a real plant or cover it if you are using it for something else. The choice is yours. So I wrap the jute until I reach the edge of the bottom of this pot, but I don't cut the jute. I just leave it attached for now because we're going to continue with it. I have this huge roll of this coated tracer wire in my hoarder's basement, which I've used before and I still don't know what it's actually for. So feel free to let me know in the comments if you actually know what this stuff is used for. But anyway, I use a wire cutters to cut 11 pieces of this bendable wire. The pieces are all taller than the clay pot. I'm going to hot glue the bottom of each of the 11 wires to the bottom of the clay pot. And I marked a piece of string at 3/4 of an inch to try and space the wires out evenly, but as is always the case, when it came to the last 3 pieces of wire to glue on there, I ended up having to squish them a little bit closer than all of the rest to make them fit, but it is no big deal. We don't need to be perfect. Now, I never cut that thick jute wire that we wrapped the bottom with, so I'm going to continue wrapping it around the clay pot, starting from where we left off and going up the pot right over the bottoms of all of those wires that we glued. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to hide those glued wire bottoms, plus it's going to make the wires much more secure so that they will stay in place. I only go up enough to cover those globs of hot glue that are covering the wires. To end wrapping the jute, I just cut it and use a scissors to kind of stuff that cut piece down under the rest of the jute, securing it with a little bit of hot glue. I cut an extremely long piece of macrame cord and I didn't measure it. It was just very long, and if I run out of it, I can just add more later. I fold the cord in half, and starting with the folded part, I stuff that down in one of those spaces and secure it with a little bit of hot glue. And if you are familiar with basket weaving, this will be familiar, but we are going to do a very basic basket weaving stitch that uses 2 pieces of rope at a time, which is why we needed to fold the cord in half. The basket weaving stitch is as follows. You're holding both pieces of rope and you're going to twist your hand each time you bring the rope over one of the pieces of wire. So basically, each time a piece of rope comes down over that wire, it's being weaved over, then under from the wire before it. It's like weaving over and under, but with 2 pieces of rope simultaneously. It's super easy once you get the hang of it, and you can slow the video down or even pause it if you need to watch it in slow motion. I'm twisting my hand as I pull the rope over each wire, and I just twist it each time before I pull it over the wire. And since the wire is tight at the bottom, I really need to push that rope down and keep it tight so that I don't have any gaps where you'll be able to see that yellow color of the wire poking through. And I'm just going to keep doing this around and around and around. And once I've gotten halfway up with the basket weaving, I bend my wires out a little to make it easier for me to be able to get the rope onto them. And then I just keep going till I hit that ledge on the top. I decided to weave the macrame cord all the way until I hit the end of it. So once I'm nearing the end of the macrame cord, I'm going to start really pushing that rope down tightly so that there is no wire peeking out. And I really put some muscle into it, making sure all those stitches are as tight as they can be. After my last stitch, I simply trim it and I tuck that end of the macrame cord down under the rest of the rope. And I'm going to add a dab of hot glue to hold it in place. To finish the top, I grab that thick jute again, and I'm going to cut a long piece and double it up. And then I'm going to continue the basket weaving with this thick jute, just like we did with the macrame cord. I have 2 pieces, and I twist my hand as I pull the rope over each of the pieces of wire. And I'm going to weave this jute until I hit the very top lip of my clay pot, the same way I did with the macrame cord. When I get to the top, I use hot glue inside where the jute meets the wire on all of the pieces of wire to secure the wire and the jute. And I end that weaving of the jute the same way as I do with the macrame cord. I'm going to cut it, and I'm using glue to secure it while I push that end down as far as it will go. I use a wire cutter to cut off all the remaining pieces of wire, trying to get as close to the bottom as I can. Lastly, I use more of that thick jute to cover the tops of my wires, wrapping around the top of the clay pot 4 times so that none of the ugly wire tops are visible at all. And this is my clay pot basket, and honestly, I love the way this looks. I am thinking of doing this to all my clay pots, and frankly, although it's time-consuming, basket weaving is a super relaxing activity, and I am all for relaxed crafting. But as usual, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these Dollar Tree DIY high-end dupe basket hacks are your favorites and why. I really love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Your support means everything to me, and I'm thankful every day for each and every one of you. And if you've enjoyed any of these Dollar Tree DIY high-end dupe basket hacks, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. I would love to have you here. Until next time, thanks for watching. My name is Sarah. I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.